Okay. Thank you guys so much, and thank you, Core, for doing the Q&A. You guys had such great questions, and now we are going to transition over to Eddie's Q&A, especially for you guys who were asking about all the audio questions and things like that. So, will we get started and get some? Oh yes, real quick. Do we have permission to record your Q&A for the people who cannot make it?
Yeah, of course.
Cool, cool. All
Can you hear
right.
me? I'm here, right?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, cool.
And I'm going to hop out as soon as we get going with the questions. But real quick, if you wanted to just give a quick overview of some of the work you've done in the industry. I know we have your bio and announcements, but just kind of a little overview of like where you're coming from in the industry.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Eddie Correa. I have been engineering professionally for around 7, 8, 9 years, something like that. Um, I moved out to LA to do music and wrote music for television and movies for a short period of time, but wasn't really feeling it. So while I was going to school to do some other stuff, I transitioned into doing recording voiceover work, and I ended up really liking it, and I've been stuck here ever since. But you probably know me from a lot of anime, a lot of video games. That's usually the forte. There's plenty of other work on the roster that I would love to talk about, but sadly is NDA redacted. So, like the story goes, a million things that I would love to talk about but can't, but at least a little bit of what I've done when it comes to like anime and video games, because that's usually what I'm known for anyways. But yeah, that's
Cool. Well,
that's
it
about
looks
it.
like we already got a couple questions going in the chat. So I'm going to hop
Oh,
out so that you can answer these and we can just
beautiful.
kind of go in order.
Cool.
Awesome.
What kind of music do you like? I'm a metalhead. I like a lot of metal. I like a lot of the progressive stuff. Right now I'm really happy with the way that the metal scene is going. I also like dubstep. I actually I opened for Skrillex once upon a time back when he was a metalhead. Um, long times ago's. But yeah, I use different DAWs. I use a couple different DAWs. I use Pro Tools for anything vocal related. So anything for voiceover work, I use Pro Tools. And if I am composing music, I use Logic. Um, yeah, that's about it for that. What's the worst read session you've ever had to look over in terms of audio quality? I don't know if I can answer that without like totally shitting on people, but I've had a couple sessions that were pretty much the equivalent of just really not great audio quality, or I've had a couple times where people just have had the mic backwards, which is whew. Um Always make sure speak into the mic where the logo is. That is the front of your mic. Um which parts of Jojo did you work on? I did a good chunk of part 3, and I want to say I did like the ending chunk of part 3, and then I did the beginning chunk of part 4. Um, I think I'm sure someone else would remember that a little more than me. Um, but yeah, what got me interested? How did I get my start? So the short answer, I kind of answered a little bit, but I'll elaborate a little more. I came out here to do music stuff, and I learned how to engineer, and work Pro Tools and do the computer stuff, all the tech stuff that way, which was kind of my learning experience there. And then I got contacted to do some work because a client was like, I think they were looking for my dad, and they ended up getting a hold of me, and I went into work. Um, and I was going to school at the time, so I didn't really know what was going on. I just kind of like went with it because I was like, hey, look, work. They're offering me a lot of money. Um, and then it ended up being something for the Devil May Cry series. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna drop out and keep doing this. This will be great. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much how it was, and I never left. So yeah, here I am. For someone trying sound treating with limited space, what do you advise using to best results for the smallest space? Ooh, that's a chunky one. I think in general, I would advise using a lot. The more soundproofing you can get, the better. But if you have a very, very small space, it kind of limits what you can do. Um, I know I know a couple people who are working out of booths that are fairly small, like a 3x3 esque style thing, and though they can work as long as they're really soundproofed, but you really want to look for more of a bigger space if you can. I would recommend like a 4x5 foot space, and then just throw up uh some soundproofing and some foam squares. I recommend the thicker foam squares, the half-inch ones that you can get like super bulk on Amazon. They don't really do much, sorry. Um, you do what you can, but I would recommend getting the thicker squares if you're going to do that. Um, how hard was it to settle in LA? Any suggestions on LA stuff? I had family here, so it was easier for me. I had a lot of family out here, so I was already kind of, you know, good. And I had been out here, in and out of um, LA for most of my life, so it was really easy for me to get acclimated here. If your suggestions for people who want to come here, save up because LA's expansive. I would save up a good chunk before you come here, something that you can like live off of for at least like 6 months to a year. And look for a job immediately because if you're doing any sort of work in this industry, you're gonna need a second job. That's yeah, that's about it. Um, is this a JoJo reference? Yes, it is. Um, materials would I recommend for setting up a home studio? I mean, all of the above. It kind of depends on what you're looking for. You're gonna need your computer. You're gonna need a certain DAW to work. If you want to do anything like professional in the industries, you're gonna have to use Pro Tools. I don't make the rules. It's just kind of how it goes. You're gonna need all the equipment to go with it. You're gonna need a mic. You're gonna need preamps. You're gonna need interfaces and stuff like that. It's a lot of stuff. There's going to be a lot of research that goes into that, but you're going to have to do a lot of things. You could start off with the essentials, like getting your mics and your preamps and your interfaces and stuff like that, and that's like a good start. Get a pair of good, decent speakers. The better they are, the more problems you'll be able to hear. Yeah. Work for the money. You don't need to get the most expensive thing, but there is definitely like the more money you put into these things, typically the better quality they are. There are things that are really good bang for buck, but most of the time, the more money you're gonna pay, the better quality it is. Um, how important do you think it is for VAs to edit their audio? Um, I think I don't think voice actors should be going super hardcore on their audio. Most engineers like myself really prefer that you send us raw audio. Because especially nowadays where we're trying to get a good judgment of what your actual space sounds like, and if you've sent us anything that's edited or tinkered with in any way, then we can't really, know we can't really know what we're working with. Um, do you think this type of almost audio engineering competition amongst voice actors for auditions will last for quarantine? I don't know if that necessarily makes sense. I don't think if there is a weird competition thing, I don't know anything about it. I don't think that should be a thing. You guys aren't necessarily engineers, so you shouldn't try to be. You shouldn't have to force yourself to be. Granted, we're in quarantine right now and everything's remote. You do need to know how to use your gain knob. We kind of expect that at least a little bit from you. We don't want to. We would rather have control of that, but because we're remote, you guys kind of need to take the reins on that stuff. Um, Sorry, I don't like it either, but that's kind of how it is right now. Is age a factor for getting jobs? No. Steve Bloom started working professionally like into his 30s, so you're fine. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. Hey, June, what's up? What's a piece of audio quality home studio recordings that are typically not aware of? Piece of information about quality that actors are typically not aware of. There's a lot of those. That's a good question, June. Hold on, let me take a sip for this. That's a good one, June. So yeah, let me blow your guys' minds real quick. There's a thing that is called a noise floor. And that is pretty much just like ambient noise in your room, in your booth, or whatever. That it sits way in the background, and that is like a specific thing that we as engineers kind of look at when we're judging files and when we're looking at files, whether or not we can use rooms or something like that. So if you have a high noise floor, you would probably need more isolation, more soundproofing type stuff. If you have a lower noise floor, it's cleaner. The reason why it's so important is because if you're recording at a certain level and we need to, bring it up in the mix or something like that, well, if your noise floor is too high, while we're bringing up your vocal, we're also bringing up that noise floor. And so if we have to throw compression on your voice, we're also compressing that noise floor, and that becomes more audible in these files. So noise floor is usually one of those things that we as engineers heavily look at in order to be like, hey, can we use this person's setup? Is it good enough, kind of thing. Most of the time, it's not something unworkable, but there are a fair amount of times where I'm like, ooh, their noise floor is just right there. I can't do anything about that. But yeah, that is a good question. Jeez. What specific materials do you recommend to treat a small home studio? A small home studio. So let me go through this stuff. I actually did a whole thing, and we can, Kira, I'm sure we'll find it at the end. But a couple engineers and myself put out a seminar at the very beginning of quarantine. Granted, it's very much specifically for the current state, the current working actor. So if you guys are new, it's not going to necessarily apply to you immediately, but it is a good reference point. But we go over all of these things where we're like, hey, if you're looking for like booths or setups or stuff, here's some materials. So if you're looking for like sound treatment or something like that, there is stuff called mass loaded vinyl. Or vinyl mass, and it's pretty much just sheets of thick rubber. And it's one of the ways one of the things that I use a lot to build booths, actually. So what I would do is if I'm building a booth, I would line the walls with these like rubber sheets, and what it does is it kind of dampens the sound. When you speak or when you're doing anything with your voice, the sound waves kind of bounce off walls. Well, with mass loaded vinyl, it doesn't bounce as much as it would be like just a normal wall. It kind of just like hits and kind of dissipates a little bit. And then what I do after the fact is I get really thick, like soundproofing squares, like, the fun, colorful ones that you see in everyone's booths. And I get a bunch of those and then put those on top of the vinyl. And that really makes for a deadened room sound. I would check out that mass loaded vinyl. It is one of those things that a lot of people don't really know about, but it's good. The only problem is that you can kind of only buy it in bulk, which sucks, but it's really good for that kind of stuff. My mic is incredibly sensitive for plosives, mix-shape shifter. Even with multiple pop filters, there are obvious plosives. I've told to tilt the mic to the side, but how would you advise people whose mics tend to cause a lot of plosives and frictives? Okay, so I think this is a weird question to answer because plosives in general, you're going to hear a lot of plosives from me because I don't have a pop filter, but I'm also just kind of like not worrying about it, so I'm not trying to, make it work. But plosives, for the most part, are something that you as the actor need to learn how to control. It's mostly a technique thing and not necessarily a mic thing. Certain mics do, get this get more catch plosives a little bit harder than others, but it is I would say 90% of that problem comes from technique. There are different things you can do, like if you're talking about a thing and you could use the finger trick where you put a finger in front of you and it kind of cuts the plosive and it doesn't make it as harsh, but there are just different techniques that you can do. I think it is mostly a technique thing and not necessarily a mic thing. If you could also look at specific pop filters, I would say that the little mesh pop filters, I would very much argue don't do anything. If you're going to get a pop filter, specifically get something like a Stedman pop filter. They are much more expensive, but they do the job much better. If you're getting something off Amazon for like $15, it's really not going to do it. Get something like a Stedman that's like, a little heavier on the price point, and it's so much more worth it. Amazing Max, what's the process of making different mic setups and match and sound cohesive in the final mix on a professional dub? Oh boy. So the process, taking a drink for this one too. Also, I'm drinking tea. Always drink stuff. Stay hydrated. Get your water, get your tea. It's very good for you. The process is a little much because now instead of just like mixing, all these different voices on the same mic, you're mixing on different mics, as I'm sure you guys all know. It's one of those things where we kind of have to listen to voices and be like, okay, so this person has a lot more mids to them. This person is really bassy. How can I equal these guys out? Where is my start off point? Usually, at least specifically, what I do is I will pick the whoever has the best setup or the most familiar setup to myself, and kind of get everyone a little bit closer to them, or I try and make them sound like that one person. And if it's not working, then I'll switch to another person and be like, okay, maybe I can make everyone sound like this person. And it's usually like it's usually like a EQ type thing. If I'm using like a reverb or something, I usually put everyone through the same reverb. Just because you don't necessarily want to put a different reverb on a different person, because then it makes it sound like they're in a different space. So if you're going to throw reverb and stuff on people, try to make sure that you're using the same reverb or a very similar reverb, because that will help make it seem like they're at least in the same space. But for the most part, I haven't had to do too much with reverb or stuff like that. Am I into any specific stoner doom metals? I am. I do like Electric Wizard. But it kind of just depends. Right now, I came up on the metalcore scene. So metalcore is definitely my jam. The new Attack songs are fantastic. But I don't necessarily discriminate. If I like the music, I like the music. Working remotely as an audio engineer, how's the different rooms and acoustics of talent been? Have you found a way to speed through actors' recording space and make it as consistent as possible for projects? No. There's not really a great way to do it, necessarily. Like each engineer is always going to have their different ways to look through these things. And Lich, your question is similar. How has your workflow changed since COVID forced remote recording? Given that everyone has the same setups at home, how much of your time is generally devoted to matching tone, volume, blah 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 blah, as opposed to when they're in studio? Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of the same deal. It takes a lot more time. I would say at least with a couple current projects that I am on now, I am depending on how long the project, say the project is like, like a 20-hour record project. Well, I usually try and do like a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-1.5 ratio. So if I'm, working 1 hour on the record, I'm probably working an hour and a half on the edit. During COVID, it's probably like double that now. So like every hour that I put into a record, I'm probably putting like another 2 to 3 hours into the edit, just going through and matching everything, going through trying to make everyone match. It is definitely like turned a lot of 8-hour days into 14-hour days. Yes, and yes, I generally try to bring everyone to the best quality I can. If there's, I try and if there's problematic room noise, I will denoise them. You know, I will put them through whatever filters I can to make it sound as clean as possible. Um, yeah, I don't necessarily want to make anyone sound bad. Our goal is 100% to make everyone sound as good as possible. Do I need Pro Tools if I'm just an actor? No. If you are an actor, you do not need Pro Tools. If anyone ever tells you that, they are wrong. As an actor, you do not need Pro Tools. As an engineer, you will at one point need Pro Tools for sure. Or if you're looking to do anything like what I'm doing, you will need Pro Tools at a certain point. But if you are just an actor, you do not need Pro Tools. You can use Audacity, you can use Logic, you can use whatever DAW you are comfortable with. They are all fine. Um, yeah. Cerberus Knight, can someone still work for a certain VO company if you live in a different state? Can I send audio for companies like Funimation if you are in Nevada? Yeah, you technically can. Most studios in general don't really want to do the remote recording thing, but I think they're because of COVID, everyone is a little bit more open to it now. I could like I as far as I'm know a couple very big names that are working on current Funimation projects right now, and they're big characters like in My Hero and stuff like that, and they don't live in LA and they don't live in Texas. I know a couple people who live in Florida and that are working. I know a couple people who are in New York and are working on this stuff. So it just kind of depends on your space. Definitely the better space, the better treatment you have, the more akin to a studio sound you have, the more likely they will be willing to use your files. But that also depends on are you ready to be in a show like that? Are you prepared enough as an actor to be in a show like that? You know, if your chops are not up to snuff, they're probably not going to use you. Yeah. Scythe, stalked your IMDb page. I assume you're a gamer since you work on them. What's an unreleased game you're looking forward to playing on casually on your own time? Ooh, what can I talk about? Uh, I am looking forward to Breath of the Wild 2, for sure. There is a new game that just got announced. I don't remember the name of it, but it looks like a Devil May Cry-esque thing. It looks like Devil May Cry and Nier had like a baby or something like that. That looks really good. I'm looking forward to that. Um, the new God of War Ragnarok. Super looking forward to that. That'll be that'll be super hype. Absolute butt worst mic you have ever heard or used. Um, Surprisingly, it was not the Blue Yeti. If you guys know me, you will know that I will talk mad shit on the Blue Yeti. Just because it's a very introductory, and it's a baby's first mic kind of deal. It is not something I would use. It's not something I want to ever come across for the most part. I've had to work with that kind of mic a lot during quarantine, but I don't know the worst. I don't remember, but I know there are plenty. I think, granted, if you got your mic for under $100, your engineer is probably going to hate it. I think that's kind of stuck. Minty, I've been using RX8 for mouth clicks, and I think it makes the audio too fuzzy, over compressed. What do you think is good level sensitivity for it? If you are an actor, none. If you're sending auditions, none. Don't touch it. We don't want you to edit your files. If this is something as an engineer you're using, I generally don't do anything over the stock setting. Unless it's like a very specific, like if there is a very specific click that I can't get in a word, maybe I'll just isolate that word and then crossfade it and then like crank the sensitivity for that area. But generally I don't use much past the stock sensitivity. I want to say like demouth click starts at like a 4, and sometimes I even bring that down to like a 3.5. Any tips for editing other than green apples and water? I mean, green apples and water. There's not really too much more than that. That was kind of in it. I'm drinking tea. I am actually drinking tea. Unlike last night on stream, I was drinking tea plus extra ingredients. I am actually just drinking tea right now. Most difficult session. How did I navigate through it? Most difficult session. I will try and be as vague as possible. Because I liked the client, but the people they brought in were not great. I had to do ADR for a movie, and this was years ago. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. And we had to like redub a whole scene pretty much. And the scene was like a family singing karaoke or something like that. And we had to get them, and on set, I think they like lost the audio, so that's why we had to come back in. And they brought in like a quote unquote music supervisor. And she was a not nice lady. I'm not going to use the word, but you know the word. She was one of those. And she didn't actually have any music experience. So she was kind of like directing these actors, and on set the actors were meant to sing, the karaoke, they're meant to be all bad singers, so they're trying to ADR to bad singing, and it just doesn't work well. And of course they want it was a really cheap kind of option, so we were working off of like a single mic, and we had like 6 people crammed into a booth. It was all sorts of not fun. I never want to do a session like that again. I think the only way I got through it was just kind of, I think I wouldn't recommend this, but just because I knew the specific client very well, and they knew me very well, and they knew my whole background was like music. Like I don't have a degree in music, but I literally should have a degree in music with the amount of things that I've taken, credits that I have. So I pretty much kind of just took over the session, was like, hey, you guys do this. So I kind of just like cut the person out of there, out of talking, and then it kind of worked. Opinion on Eurobeat. Eurobeat is dope. Initial D is dope. I like that shit. What's your opinion on speedcore music? It's cool. I don't have I don't listen to speedcore like super a lot, but I don't mind it. What do you think of the NVIDIA broadcast for mic noise canceling? Yo, it is dope. It is super awesome. If any of you guys ever send me auditions with that shit on, I will kick you in the face. You can hear Correa laughing in the background. I think it is fantastic. If you are streaming, it is amazing. I would use it. If you're a streamer, I highly recommend. If you are doing stuff on VO, please do not. Again, as an engineer, I do not want you to be editing your files, your audition files, to send them in, because then it means I don't know what I'm actually working with. I can't reverse the edits that you've done. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. Do I offer home studio consultation? I used to, at the very beginning of quarantine, I did. I don't really do it anymore because, one, I just don't have the time. And two, 90% of my consultations were just being like, okay, so here is the bare minimum thing that you should have already known how to do, and here's how to do it. I was pretty much teaching people like how to use an interface and stuff like that. When it comes down to it, you guys should already know how to use your interface. I think that'll kind of translate into another point I'll make is, right now, and in general, I think the more you guys know about your personal equipment and how it works, the more comfortable you will be in the long run working on this kind of stuff. And the easier it is on us as engineers if we are remote recording. So if you guys know your preamp very well, if you know where your scream levels are on your gain, and you know where your just conversational levels or your quiet levels, that helps us a lot. And it helps us when we can be like, hey, dial it this much this way or this much this way. If you know what we're talking about, then it helps so much. But yeah, you lost soul aside. Yes, that was it. That was I want that. I don't know what it is, but I want it. Lunafreya, super silly question, but a lot of us have only worked out of our booths and haven't done any studio work yet. Is it common to let your engineer know when you're going to come in hot and need to turn down the gain? Just would like to know so I don't blow out my engineer's ear on my first studio session. Haha. Okay, so it's not necessarily a silly question. I would rather you ask than not. If there is a line, because right now engineers are we're trying to navigate 6 more things than we're used to within every take now. We're doing a lot more work than what we were doing before. If you know that there's going to be a big line or a big screaming line, and the engineer hasn't necessarily said anything, yeah, just go out and be like, hey, I think this one's going to be big, I'm going to turn down. Because if you just go for it and then you peak, we can't use that file and we would have just, wasted time. In the studio. In the studio. I'm dumb. Even in the studio, that's fine too. If you're gonna be, even if it's one of those things where okay, well, let me rephrase. So in the studio, we have control of the gain. So we're gonna have more control of whether or not, if you're gonna be loud, we're probably gonna know. So if you're in studio, you probably don't need to worry about that as much. If you are home, then yes, absolutely. But if you're in studio, don't worry about that. Just focus on the acting. Favorite movie of all time? Ooh, I don't know. That's a hard one. That is probably like a multi-way tie between like Coco, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, Scott Pilgrim. I like a lot of dumb indie movies. Yeah. Is there an issue with a recording space that is too dead? Would a slightly wet sound be preferable or better to have a dead recording space? I think it depends on the situation. I would argue that a more dead space is better. But it depends on what kind of dead space it is. If you are in like a tiny booth and it is a very dead space, then it works for certain things, but not for others. Because the smaller space you're in, the more boxy sounding it is. So in certain cases, if I'm working on like a live action thing, I probably would rather have something that's more in a room. Granted, I don't want you in a bathroom. I don't want you with a bunch of reverb and stuff like that. So it really kind of depends. I think in general, it's better to lead on the deader the space is, the better it is. But I think that's maybe one of those things that you guys probably shouldn't worry about too much, unless specifically an engineer is like, hey, it sounds this way, maybe you should do this. I think you guys should be soundproofing as much as you can. In the meantime. Yeah. As an audio engineer, what are some of the worst mixes, edits you've heard? The ones that can make your ears bleed. This can be from anything. So I can't really. Okay, here's the best way I can say this without like throwing absolute shade, because I know COVID has been very hard on all of us, but any of the simuldubs that like that first week of COVID, the first week of quarantine, where they had to like try and do simuldubs from home and no one knew how to navigate. Those are very noticeable. Like I heard a lot of anime that I was just like, ooh, that doesn't sound good. But COVID aside, if you guys ever watched Aiko, AICO, it was a Netflix show. They had a dub for it. The original dub, not the one that's currently there is different. I know because I did it. But they originally did a dub, And they did it for really, really cheap. Netflix did it for really, really cheap. And the mix was awful. It was so awful that I had people over and I would purposefully be like, here, have a beer. We're going to watch this dumpster fire. Um, and the mixing was awful. The acting was awful. It was just one of those things all across the board that was just like, what are you doing? And I remember eventually I heard a little bit of insight from someone about the inside process. And it was one of those things where I was like, no professional studio should ever do things that way. So if you guys can ever find the original dub of Ico, it's a fucking treat. Yeah. So yeah. How many voice actors were already fairly prepared for remote recording during the boom, and how many were caught with their pants down? I would say 80% of actors were caught with their pants down. And 10% of them were boldly confident but severely lacking, and then the other 10% were like, all right. I think there were two rooms that I heard that I thought were of the studio quality, that quote unquote broadcast quality variety. There were only two people out of like the hundreds, and I don't joke you, hundreds of vocal booth, treatments that I heard at the very beginning of quarantine. There were two that I was like, this is studio quality. So, most of the industry did not know what to do, and most of the industry did not feel prepared to upgrade or do anything to make their systems better, and they kind of we didn't know what to tell them other than like, hey, if you got residual checks, you might want to break into them now. I can't tell you anything else. I can't make a dinky USB mic, sound appropriate for this, for this live action show, It did not pan out well. There were a lot of actors who pretty much metaphorically told me to fuck off, and I was like, okay, come back to me when you want to start working again. And then go figure, a month later they would come crawling back and be like, hey, so what do I do? And I'm like, you want to look into these things. That's pretty much why I don't do consultations anymore, because a lot of times I'll be like, hey, you might want to look into this thing. And they'll be like, fuck off. And I'll be like, okay, fine. You do you. It's not my job on the line. Lizard, how do you determine whether a working microphone is plugged into a broken interface or a broken microphone is plugged into a working interface? Easy. Change the mic, change the interface. If you don't have access, I don't know. I think in general microphones tend to sound very, very weak if they're busted. If there is a problem with the microphone, they tend to sound weak. They will lose body. You'll feel like you have to crank the gain a lot more to get them to work. And interfaces in general, sometimes I don't know. It's kind of hard. I think if you switch a mic and the new mic is fine, then you can tell that it's the other mic that's a problem. But I think in general, if you don't have the access to that, it kind of depends. Opinion on outboard hardware for home studio setups. My horrible gear obsession gotten me a full pre-EQ comp DSR hardware chain that I generally keep on very low settings when recording. Curious as that's ever okay for remote recording sessions. I would say no. I would not want, because technically you are hybrid. Technically you are tampering with the files at that point. We would very much prefer that everything is as raw as possible, because if you put in, go through a hardware chain, then it limits us on what we can or can't do. And if there's something that was set too high or too low, we can't reverse it. So unless it is specifically like talked about with your engineer on a certain project, we would prefer you just have it as raw as possible. I cannot express enough. I'm Gordon Ramsay over here being like, raw! Yeah, that's raw, please. Outboard hardware doesn't really, it may sound better for us analog heads, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's better for the situation. Am I big on rhythm games? I like them. I am not good at them. I lied. I was very good at Guitar Hero, but that's pretty much it. Anything else, I'm really not good at. Have I ever been in one of the world quietest room where you go insane? No, I have not, but I would like to. I want to know what that is like. I want to see if I can hear my blood flowing, and see if it does the thing that everyone says it does. It would be really cool. I want to check it out. Brittany, recommendations for post-processing with indie devs. Ooh, sometimes they don't have an engineer due to tight budgets and will plunk the raw recorded audio as is, or sometimes the bad ones will harp on your auditions for not having polished enough audio qualities that some post-processing has. First of all, those indie devs, they need to be better at their jobs, one. Two, if they're paying you, yes, Bird, if they're paying you to do that, or even if you know they're just not going to do any post-processing with it, see, that's hard. I would say there isn't, like, recommendations necessarily, other than, like, you might need to learn a little bit more of the engineering stuff. Bird, chill. You might need to learn some of the engineering stuff when it comes to, like, hey, do I do these do I EQ in a certain way? Do I compress in a certain way? And for the most part, I would very much just argue that it should be very light. Anything you do should be very, very light. I think the problem with thinking that way, though, is that while you may sound super crisp and clean when it comes to those situations, other people will not. I think this question is more of a not necessarily should not be a problem for actors, but kind of falls on you guys in a certain extent. This is a indie dev problem that they should be handling on their end. This should really not fall on you. So any of you indie devs out there, I'm trying not to be a dick, but I might be a little bit of a dick. You guys should really be handling that kind of thing. For you indie devs out there, if you don't have an engineer to go through and mix the files, please get an engineer to go through and mix the files. Even if it's really light stuff all around, at least that way you can be like, hey, I can throw everyone through, this specific chain. Or you can be like, hey, everyone, normalize at this level, or hey, use these settings on all of your files. We're looking for this RMS, we're looking for this true peak, we're looking for these dB levels. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have, like, a great answer for that one, Brittany. It's one of those things that I see a lot of, and that I'm like, you can do the things, but that is one of those things that really shouldn't fall on you. And at the end of the day, they're paying you to act. They're not paying you to be an engineer. You know what I mean? Yeah. But odd question: why are there no 18+ anime dubs anymore? Or another word, why are there no really bad funny dubbing anymore per se? Well, there are 18+ anime dubs. I personally worked on Testament of Sister New Devil. That was an 18+ anime. And we did a whole dub, the whole two seasons of that. So they still exist. As opposed to, like, really bad dubs, well, we don't really want to do bad dubs. There's not really a reason to do bad dubs, It's like there's a higher standard than there was in the 90s. Yeah, you said the bird agrees. There's a higher standard now, so it's like, we're not here to do bad dubs. If you want to do, like, really funny, funny dubs, like we did Cells at Work, and Cells at Work is all sorts of campy and hilarious, and gosh, it's so funny. And I would argue that it is still, like, a really good, solid dub, regardless of whether or not it's campy and feels like it's a little bit Power Rangers-esque, if you know what I mean. So I think the right answer is that there's just a higher standard now. Dubs have come a long way since the ghost stories of the industry. Hey Ed, is it true that audio engineers have their own social clubs groups? I mean, yes. Um, I have a group of engineer friends that we have a couple like group chats. So engineers talk to each other. Yeah, we don't necessarily have specific cliques. Like we're not just in like a bunch of cliques. There isn't just like an engineer clique kind of thing. But we do talk to each other. I am good. If you guys know who Jeff Vicente is, he's an engineer. He runs Central Command. Him and I are really good friends. James Scullion over Bang Zoom is another one of our friends. JP Aller, who was formerly, I know him from Bang Zoom, but he's now like one of the head audio people over at Riot Games. I still talk to him on certain things. So engineers talk to each other. We go over certain things. There are times where we're like, hey, have you seen this new plugin? I want to try this kind of thing. We do that all the time. And that's pretty much most of engineer social groups. Hey man, just joined. Can you tell me who you are? What are your opinions on spaghetti? Spaghetti is delicious. All pasta is delicious. If you don't agree, then I think you might need to get that. I think you might need to get that checked out. I'm Eddie. I've been engineering professionally for about 7 or 8 years. In the industry, you know me from a bunch of like anime and video games. I've worked on the Devil May Cry series. I've worked on the Jojo series. I've worked on the Fire Emblem series. I've got a lot of stuff. Go look at my IMDb or my ANN or something like that. You'll find stuff. Google is your best friend. Google is your best friend, everyone. If you have questions that I'm not answering, that I'm not able to answer super well, Google will be your best friend. Yeah, always check that out. Would you recommend formal education for someone looking into getting into this? Is it required? I would definitely look into it. It is not required. I know plenty of engineers who don't have a Pro Tools certificate. I personally do not have a certificate in Pro Tools. I did not get a degree in Pro Tools, but I know 90% of if you are like over the age of 30 or 40, you probably have a Pro Tools certificate. But for the most part, a lot of us younger engineers really don't have Pro Tools certificates. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's like if you want to get a job, a studio's going to be like, well, have you had any experience? And you'll be like, well, no. And they'll be like, eh. So experience is 100% the best thing. But if you want to go to school for that, I encourage it. Please don't go in debt though. Yeah, as an engineer, what is your favorite aspect feature of Pro Tools? Oh boy. I think my favorite thing about Pro Tools is that you can do like anything with it for the most part. I am still learning new things to this day that have been like available for a long time. I think for the most part, I think it's just really nice when it comes to quick keys and stuff like that. Granted, I've been using Pro Tools for a long, long time, so there's a lot of things that I'm just like, yeah. I don't necessarily have like a favorite feature, but I do just really like I do really like how versatile Pro Tools is because you can do so much with it, and it's really great. Paradoxical currently got a 3x2x2 ish room in the garage with one stick wood boards covering 2 sides facing towards the rest of the garage and the other up against brick. Top on boards once I put the ventilation in. Got 2 back of baffle boxes for that ventilation. Inside has been padded with sound insulation, moving blankets, even the doors like that. And once the vents are done, sound absorbing from everywhere. Computer setup is on the outside. Good. Any other things you'd recommend to make this better? Or for a typical home build? Look into mass loaded vinyl. You can have all the sound insulation you need. Mass loaded vinyl is definitely one of those things it's like the unsung underdog of the industry because so many big studios use it. And you would never know because it's kind of like inside the walls. And it's usually behind all the foam and stuff like that. I mean, I would say if you're doing the mostest with that, what you're doing, I think you're already pretty good. I mean, 3 meter by 2 meter, I don't know exactly how much translation that is, um, but if you're if you're making like baffle boxes and stuff like that, I feel like you're already most of the way there. I would definitely check, depending on like your noise floor and stuff like that. Um, check all the fun things. Are you getting the echo? Are you getting any noise from the outside? Is it working? If you don't have carpet or like a rug underneath you, get one of those. That will definitely help because you want to seal yourself off as much as possible. The internet is the new Library of Alexandria. The only problem is we don't know whether or not the Library of Alexandria had a bunch of lying dudes on it. Pineapple on pizza. I think it's heresy, but I don't mind it. How would I start in audio engineering? Just go in. I would say learn a DAW. Like pick a DAW, fiddle around with one, or fiddle around with multiple. See which one you feel you like a lot, and then just YouTube that shit. Like there are endless amounts of like YouTube courses, on like every DAW available. I kind of learned like a makeshift overnight Ableton course from like YouTube, pretty much. And while I don't really use Ableton, it was cool to kind of get into. So yeah, I would just like do the research, and play with the programs. The more you know, the better off you're going to be. The more you carbo load when it comes to audio information, the better it'll be. Yeah. Simple question. What is the difference between MP3 audio file and a wave? Because I can't hear it. You have to be trained to hear it. It's one of those things where if you know the difference, then you know the difference. An MP3 is a more compressed file. And it's not just like audio compression necessarily. It is more digital compression, file compression. Wave is more natural. It's a bigger file. It's going to sound more raw, and it's going to sound cleaner. An MP3 file is going to be the same thing, just more compressed and a smaller file size. The quality isn't as good. There is definitely a lower quality when it comes to MP3 as opposed to Wave. When it comes to remote recording, if we are asking you for a backup, we are going to ask for Wave. And on that note as well, we will ask you for specific specs for the most part. If you do not know, please feel free to ask. If there is a time where you have a client who didn't specify what they wanted, ask them. Please ask them, because if they get something afterwards and they're like, shoot, then you're kind of in trouble, if they wanted something different. Jordan, on an audition that I was contacted for, I submitted an audition to them and they responded with, something could be wrong with it. Doesn't sound good. Could be on my side, though. I responded with, you got a TLM 103, a Steinberg UR-T2, and a home booth. My end, it's clean booth and audio is all. The casting director for it is based in Mexico. The audio was cleaned up, little amplification and little noise reduction applied. Could they have wanted a full cleanup? That an audio engineer? It's an NDA game audition. Have I done something wrong? That is a question for them. You can straight up be like, hey, client, am I to be expected to clean up my own files? Well, because, yeah, you should be getting paid more for that, one. But two, it lets you know whether or not that's a thing. Because I would argue if you have a good setup, you're probably fine. Granted, I don't necessarily know if I know what that preamp is, but I'm gonna... Sternberg, what is that? RT2? Do I know this one? Yes, I do know this one. Okay, so yeah, that's your I mean, I would argue that you have a pretty good setup. So I would just ask, hey, am I expected to clean up my files? Am I expected to edit my files as well? Yeah, I would probably say you were probably fine, unless there was something else that we don't know about. But I would I don't know. For the most part, I don't really know a lot of stuff that VO work that happens in Mexico, so I wouldn't be able to like tell you if it's like a specific client that I would know or not. I don't know. But yeah, feel free, guys. If there is a time where you are just don't know, feel free to ask, hey, am I going to be expected to clean up the files myself and send you finished files or send you mixed files, you know? Um, yeah. Cool. See you later, David. Oh, 9 by 6 by 7. Oh, that is, yeah. I think that's a beautiful size for a booth. Paradoxical. I think that's a great size for a booth. Can I ask where in dubbing audio industry you work in? I'm in LA. I'm in Los Angeles. I have done work work for Funimation. But I have and I'm also currently doing work for some New York clients as well. Granted, I am stationed in Los Angeles. That is where I work out of. That is where my studio is. Um, cool. Trying to find some casting calls in Saudi Arabia. Are the studio branches of studios that send audio to some cartoon or commercial narration? Suck it up and spend 5 years cash to go to Texas and break off to go to Funimation or some other studios. I don't know the climate in Saudi Arabia for VO. So I wouldn't know. I think if VO is the thing that you want to do long term, there will be a time where you have to move out to LA. I think that that's kind of one of those things. 90% of the industry is kind of in LA. So if you really want to get all the opportunities, LA is kind of where they are. You know, although yeah, if you do want to go to Texas first, there's plenty of stuff at like Funimation and Sentai and stuff like that. And Texas is really cheap to live. LA is not. So if you want to go there first, that's cool too. You know, it's like it's a good place, but I think eventually everyone ends up in LA. Not to say that there's not good work in Texas or New York, but everyone eventually ends up in LA. That's just kind of how it is, because most of the work is here, and like all of the big AAA stuff is here. You know, suggested microphones. One that sounds good with your voice. I don't know what your voice sounds like, so I wouldn't be able to recommend a microphone for you. Everyone is going to sound different on a different microphone. My personal microphone, I have a Bluebird. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think Kira, I think you have a Bluebird as well. Or some sort, or one of the baby bottle or something like that. But I like my Bluebird. It is really good. I think I sound really nice on it. But I know a lot of, if you used to have a Blue Baby bottle. Yep, fantastic. I know a lot of people who don't sound good on this microphone though. So it depends. It depends on your situation. Go to EQ plugin. Also kind of depends. If I'm just doing VO stuff, probably either the Q series or just the stock Pro Tools one. Because when it comes down to it, EQ is kind of just EQ. I don't do any of the crazy EQs unless I'm doing like music or something like that. If I'm mixing vocals on a music, I'll use like an SSL EQ or something like that, or like an API EQ, because those are really good for like music stuff. Yeah. But for like VO stuff, I don't really do any of the crazy stuff. I just use pretty much what's stock. Funny work stories. A million of them. I wouldn't know where to start with that. I can tell you that to jump back to the Jojo story, when we were recording Jojo Part 3, and we were getting to the point where we were recording Matt Mercer, and we were getting to the point where he had to record the High Noon line. And me being an avid Overwatch player at the time, I was cracking up, and the director, Tony Oliver, was like, "What is wrong with you? You're being a freaking weirdo." And I'm like, it's just really funny. You'll see. And then we got to the line, and Matt's like, "Guys, really?" really? And Tony didn't get it, but I was on the floor cackling. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. Um, uh, I think that's easy, quick one. Similar note, how important is the TLM 103 preferred part of remote studio auditions? Is that just a catch-all for you need a decent recording, or is that offering the required mic along with the U87? I think that there is a lot of this is a kind of hard to answer. Because a lot of times studios will just be like, "Hey, do you have this mic?" Because it's the easiest way to be like, "Yeah, here." But typically engineers aren't sending you those emails where they're like, "Hey, do you have this kind of mic?" Kind of thing. Because a lot of times studios will be like, "Hey, do you have a U87 or do you have a Neumann or something like that?" And I think if you are not on a Neumann, or I would say if you're on like one of like the knockoffs, if you're on like the X87 or the S87 or the what is it, the Studio Projects 87 or whatever, I think all of those are very Neumann-esque. I think they just want a specific sound as opposed to specifically that mic. Because if you can kind of make the sound universal across the board with all of your actors, it makes my job as an engineer much easier. Plus it's kind of like the Neumann is kind of like the standard now. I'm not like a huge fan of it, but it is, the Neumanns they're really good mics. You can't really deny it. They're really good mics, and they sound good for the most part across the board with everyone. It's kind of hard to, argue against it. I would say the one downfall of most Neumanns is that they are not great at handling high gain. So if you're someone like me who does a lot of scream vocals for like metal and stuff, I'm not going to use a Neumann because it doesn't handle that super well. Do you know anyone who does VO full-time while living in spaces outskirts of LA, like Orange County? Yeah, Zach Aguilar lives in Orange County, and he does VO full-time. I know plenty of looping people who live in, like, Santa Clarita, which is outside of LA, and they do VO work full-time. I think, yeah, I don't know why would you live in Orange County. That's more expensive than LA. But, yeah, like, go to Reseda. It's one of those things where it's like you don't have to be in LA necessarily. You can be on the outskirts. But if you're like living in Burbank or Hollywood, that means you have less of a drive. That means you don't have the LA traffic to get through. So, I'm just saying, work smart, not hard. Paradoxical. And I lost it. Scroll back up, and pretty much any work area, there's always that one type of work that consider the bottom of the barrel. Where does NSFW stuff fall when it comes to VO, and what's considered to be the true bottom of the barrel? I don't have an answer to that question. I think if you're going to work, you're going to work. People need to eat. I think specifically if you're going to be working on a lot of NSFW type materials, I would say that you should probably have a stage name for that or some sort of pseudonym. Because you never know. You never know if, Disney looks up your resume one day and they're like, "Ooh, they did Backdoor Sluts 9. We can't use them. That's not a good thing for an image." All right, Karina's obviously never seen South Park, so I'm gonna just ignore that. But yeah, if you're gonna be doing a lot of that work, I would argue you should probably have a pseudonym. I know plenty of people in this chat right now who do that. I'm not trying to call you out, but I see you. I wasn't talking about you. Yeah, there isn't really a bottom of the barrel. Let me shift that. I would argue there is. I think in general, a lot of people are not super great fans, and production people like myself are not great fans of pay-to-play sites. I think they're kind of a problem I think that looks worse on your resume than like anything else. Like if you're like a Fiverr actor, it doesn't look great for someone. If you're like trying to get in on like a AAA game, if they see that on your resume, most companies are going to be more likely to be like, "Oh, so they're they're the cheap guys. Okay, cool. So I would recommend if you're doing this stuff, try to err off of the pay-to-play sites unless you're doing it under a different name or something. You know, get your practice in, do what you got to do. People got to eat, but pay-to-play stuff really doesn't look great on a resume. I would probably argue that that's probably the bottom of the barrel, but you know, people are going to do what they're going to do. Sent about these many emails, submissions to agencies in Texas and Toronto, LA, located in Georgia. Does me being remote in my house lower my chances of working with 8 agencies outside of the states? Yes, it does. Because when it comes down to it, most places are going to prefer that you are in the area. Granted, COVID has definitely shown that we can do the remote situation, but the cost difference is a lot higher. So what we have to do now, in the same time frames that we did before, we're doing twice as much work having to deal with the different remote situations. So it is much more, it is definitely a detriment if you are not in the area and you are trying to submit to these agencies and stuff. I can tell you that most of the big agencies, like in LA, like Atlas or CESD, just will not consider you at all if you are not in LA. And if you're planning to move here, then yes, yes, you can do that. But that's, you know,
be in LA within the next 3 months.
Yeah, so it is specific. Like if you will be in LA or in Texas or wherever this agency is, then yes, you'll be able to do it possibly. But more than likely, if you are not in that area or planning to be in that area, it is a big detriment to you, and they will more than likely not consider you in the front runners. Bindi, what extra hardware on the VA side make your life easier? Splits for safety tracks, etc. Oh, you know, that's kind of a hard. I think the best way I can answer this is to just know your equipment. The better you know your equipment, the better files we're gonna get from you. As an engineer, I tend to tell people, hey, you probably want to be recording around minus 12 decibels. If you're looking at like a meter or a fader, that's like where you have the green and the red and the yellow. It's that 12 is kind of where the green and the yellow are kind of like, it's like that, like where it's tickling the yellow. I think that's the best way I can describe it without sounding like an engineer, man. I think the more you know your hardware, the better it is. And if you're working remote, I specifically am working with a lot of clients where we are not having actors record backups, because we are recording through a bunch of different, we're recording through, stuff like IPDTL or Source Connect or stuff like that. So the better your internet is, the easier that is too, because there's a lot of, if you're doing like a group record, for example, if one person's internet is bad, it's going to be a problem for everyone else in the group because it's going to be distracting and it's going to kill takes and it's going to end up in the files. So I think you don't necessarily need to do the extra work when it comes to like editorial. It's just more of like, hey, no, really understand your gain knob, really understand your equipment. If you have specific questions, for engineers at the top of the session, make sure you ask. A lot of times engineers, if I'm doing like a big group record, I'll be like, hey, if you're using these kind of mics, I want you this far away and I want your gain somewhere around here. And then we'll do like a check afterwards. Or if you're using these kind of mics, I want you here doing these kind of things, Yeah, the more you understand your equipment, the better it'll be. Also, the easier it'll be for your auditions. Because if you are recording correctly, you should not have to do a lot of work, a lot of end work on your auditions. Yeah. Would you say, Minty, would you say most of the mass-loaded vinyl that's on Amazon is decent? Do you have a specific place? I don't have a specific recommendation. I think the thicker stuff is better. I think the last time I got mass-loaded vinyl, I got it off Amazon. I think it is like if I hold on, let me help you out. Hold on. Mass loaded vinyl. So I would say any of no, not tape. Why did it go to tape? Um, I think specifically I got like the Amazon choice stuff. Or I probably did. Um, I'm trying to think, but I don't remember the exact thickness, but it was like I think the heavier it is, the better it is if it's like super thin. But granted, I think any little bit helps with this stuff. You don't need a lot necessarily. It definitely helps. It is one piece to the overall puzzle. Yeah. Liz Barker, moving blanket forests or acoustic blankets, bed canopies as effective alternatives for acoustic treatment. Yes, it just depends on how you use it. I know you can buy like PVC booths for for like I think like a couple $100, and they come with all this stuff. But like if you're gonna do it the easier way, if you don't want to like buy something like that, or if you want to make it yourself, go to Lowe's or Home Depot and just get moving blankets, because those things are great. But make sure you get the thick ones, because the thicker the blanket is, the more sound absorption it's actually doing. Um, yeah. Go get moving blankets. Super cheap over at Home Depot and Lowe's, or at least a lot cheaper than what you would pay for at like here's a sound treated acoustic blanket kind of thing. Which those are great too, but if you don't have the finances for that, do what you got to do. Has anyone ever asked about the differences between the U87 and the TL103? I found it fascinating to know the difference audio styles produced on. TLM is better for lows and mids, and U87 being roundest of all bound concepts. Shotguns with Sennheiser. TLM is not great with peaks. I struggle to manage yelly. Yeah. There is no tips for Neumanns when it comes to handling high gain. Neumanns just don't handle high gain well. None of them do. The U87 is not good at it. The 103 is not good at it. I would say the 103 is a little bit better. I would argue that you can get by in this industry easily with a 103. You don't need to hash out the extra couple $1,000s for the U87 unless you really want that U87 sound. U87 is a little bit brighter. I would say the 103 is a little more, not rounded out, but a little more just evened out. I think is the best way I can put it. I don't think any of you guys need a U87. That should be an end goal, not a initial goal. If you know what I mean. Yeah, gain is not easy with any Neumann stuff. So you're kind of stuck on that. Find a mic that's of comparable quality that is better with yelling. If you're getting a shotgun, shotguns are much better. Boom mics much better when it comes to high gain applications. It also depends on your preamp as well. So if you're using a cheaper preamp, like if you have a Scarlett Solo or something like that, those don't handle high gain well. It's one I am. If any of you guys have seen me or heard me talk about this stuff ever, you would know I'm not a big fan of the Scarlett Solo. I think it is an intro. It's if it's what you got, it's what you got. But if you have like a TLF, if you have a 103, but you're using, a Scarlett, you're putting like the engine of a Honda Civic into like a Corvette, and there's not really a reason to do that. So it could be multiple things. If you're worried about that, a better preamp will help. Better interface will help. But again, Neumann's not great for high gain stuff. What's the biggest difference between a USB and an XLR mic in terms of sound quality? You answered it yourself. Sound quality. XLR mics they're better quality. They're more clear. There's a wider EQ spectrum. USB mics are very, very limited. And I would argue that none of them are really great for VO work. Unless you're streaming or something. If you're getting like what is it, the I don't remember, the Go mic or something like that for like streaming, if you're using it for streaming, that's totally fine. But if you're doing specifically VO work, get an XLR mic, guys. They really are that much better. I know some people are going to argue with me. Don't. There's a reason I'm working. XLR mics are they're just better quality. And if you can't necessarily hear the difference, that's fine. That comes with training and that comes with, you know, being around it. But it definitely is one of those things that you can hear when it comes to final mix. You don't necessarily hear it as well on like initial recordings. But in final mixes, you will definitely hear it. It's like going back to like when simuldubs started, were still continuing to go during the beginning of the pandemic. A lot of people were using USB mics and stuff, and you could tell because everyone was trying to get mixed together. And you know, some people would just sound really bad, and some people sounded all right. And you know, it's one of those things where you can't really EQ something that's not there. And USB mics have a lot of that not there-ness, if that makes sense. But yeah. What are some funny VA pseudonyms you've seen used over the years? My one of my favorites so far is Jerome the Bone Bigley. I'm not gonna say yours now that you fucking said that out loud, dummy. I think that one is pretty good. There's a couple other ones, but I think that one's Jerome the Bone Bigley is one of my favorites. Or Juicy Flanagan is classic. If you ever see Juicy Flanagan, I promise you don't know who it is because they're like, it's shared by like everyone. Everyone uses Juicy Flanagan. So if you think you know who Juicy Flanagan is, you're lying because it's like 8 people. Yeah, everyone is you, men, women, everyone. Yeah. Pop filters or no pop filters on your mic? Pop filters. I mean, why not? It's gonna help. It goes back to earlier talk about plosives. Plosives is mostly technique, but pop filters kind of help out that last 10%. What are your thoughts on voice meter for sound routing? I don't use voice meter, so I don't know. Sorry. I don't know. Sorry. How close on the mic do you like your actor to be? I prefer about a foot away. I would say 10 to 12 inches, depending on your vocal type. If you are very loud naturally, if you are just have a very loud booming voice naturally, I would say 12 inches. But if you have a more soft spoken, I would say a little bit closer. And that's not like a solid, like it has to be this, you know, it's going to be different for everyone. Like I bring people like Cassandra Morris or Jeremy Lee. I typically have them a little bit closer on mic as opposed to someone like Richard Epcar or Jameson Price, where I'm like, dude, back off the mic, you're so freaking loud, you know. So yeah. I use a newer NW8000 condenser, which works well for $20 mic, but due to having a laptop to record off, I do have to use a 48 Phantom power supply, which helps a lot. In terms of regulating peaking audio, a bit of a rookie question, but curious, have no any preamps, industry standard or not. If had experiments, I would recommend. My favorite right now, for good bang for buck, cheaper interfaces, preamps is the SSL2 by Solid State Logic. The SSL2, I think that is a really good preamp for like, you know, on the cheaper end. I want to say it's like $250, $300-ish dollars, but it's really good. It's a great low tier preamp, but that doesn't sound low tier. Highly recommend that one for if you're looking into getting a new preamp. Super good. I love my shotgun mic for yelling. Yeah, I know, me too. I love it too. Yeah, yeah. I shotguns are really good when it comes to loud stuff. I know a lot of people use the Sennheiser 416. I think it's good. I think there are better ones out there, but the industry pretty much relies on the 416 for most stuff, so that's kind of what we use a lot. It's a really good, easy boom mic to, you know, do the thing. Um, The SM7B, not the 57B, the 7B, not 57, 7B. SM7B is go-to for streamers. It is a great podcast mic. I would argue that it's actually like one of my favorite mics of all time. I don't think it's good for VO specific stuff. It is great for streamers. It is great for podcasts. It is great if you are a metal screamer like myself, or if you're doing music. It is fantastic. It is not great for VO. What are your thoughts on the newish modeling emulation microphones? Ooh, that's a good one, Bindi. I haven't had personal experience with them yet, but so far I've only heard like really good things. I definitely want to check them out more. I've recorded a couple people who have had them, and I haven't had any problems on my end as the engineer. So I think there may be something worth looking at, but here is the caveat to that. If you don't know what you're doing, don't look into it. It is not worth even touching microphones like that if you are not like a microphone head or a tech head. You know, if you are not one of those audio people, don't look into them. They're not worth it. It's going to be a lot harder to learn how to do that than it's worth the trouble. So if you don't know a lot about microphones in the first place, don't look at those emulation microphones. If you are one of those people who just knows stuff about microphones and has worked with a lot of microphones in your time, then yeah, check it out. Go ahead. They're really cool. I want one myself, but COVID, I ain't got the money for that right now, so we'll get there eventually. I don't have a specific thought process, but I haven't had any problems with the ones I have remote recorded as of yet. Yeah, anyways. What price range do you think XLR microphones start sounding good? There's been some debate on what price range microphones start sounding good. Closest to a general consensus we found once you hit 300, your options really open up. I would say if you're paying less than $200 for an XLR microphone, you're limiting yourself. But there are plenty that are like pretty decent that are, around the $200 range. But I would say when you're looking into something like the Rode NT1A, which is like around for the $400 to $500 range, that's when you start getting to a point where it's like, that's a pretty solid mic. But if you have something like a AT2020 XLR, it's like, okay, that's pretty good. That's good for the price point. I would say if you're getting your first XLR mic, that's like a decent XLR mic. But you'll want to upgrade at some point.
Let me just say it's AT2020 on DreamWorks projects and stuff. What really made the difference was not the mic, but the interface, because I upgraded from a
yes. Yeah, so Karina gets a good point. Yeah, so here's the difference, and this is how I know you guys might not want to be thinking so much about microphone options as opposed to interface options, because Karina uses an AT2020 and Karina was working on like a DreamWorks project, and in between, Karina switched from like a Scarlett Solo to like an SSL2, and it was a drastic difference. It saves money and save the engineers time. Even the engineers specifically were like, "Ooh, your mic sounds a lot better. Did you get a new mic?" And Karina was like, "Nah, I just got a better interface." And they were like, "Ooh, good job." So I think when it comes to like if you are looking into the lower tier stuff, unless you're like if you're in the market for like Neumanns and Avalons, then focus on the mics. If you already have like something like an Avalon or an API lunchbox or something or an SSL, and if you have that the $3,000 preamp already, then yeah, you can worry about mics and stuff. But for the most part, if you're looking into the new stuff, if you're looking into a very affordable kind of situation, maybe look into putting more money into your interface as opposed to your mic. I would say an AT2020 with a better sounding, a better interface is probably going to be better than having like a higher end mic but a really not great interface. Your interface can really change a lot of things. It can really limit how good your mic is, the capabilities of your mic, or it can bring out the best parts of your mic. Yeah, your Neumann isn't going to sound great if it's plugged into something, if it's plugged into a cheaper preamp. Sorry, not sorry. I would say if you're looking into, but yeah, to actually answer that question, I would say if you're paying more than $200-300, that's when XLR mics start to be pretty decent. But yeah, how would you overcome being rejected for multiple roles? Do you focus on improving your voice even though you don't see much of a change? Take more classes. Also, this is an actor question, and I'm not really the best person to ask for that. So just go take more classes. You know, there's nothing more you can do. Yeah, Karina already went through this in the last thing, but just focus on your acting. Don't. Yeah, the voice doesn't mean anything. Focus on your acting. Because even as an engineer, if you are putting on a voice and the voice is making your acting sound bad, we're gonna, it's noticeable. The acting is the most important part. If you feel like your chops are not up to snuff, go take more classes, go do more things. That's kind of all I can say on that. Anthony, I don't have a specific mic I'd take over the 416 just because like the industry literally only uses the 416 as opposed to like condenser mics where it's like, oh, some people like the U87, some people like the 103, some people like, like the Gefels, some people like other things. The 416 is really the only shotgun mic that exists in any studio out here. Which kind of is like, okay. Yeah. Belmont used the Sennheiser 600 shotgun mic for voice acting and screaming. Should I get 2 different XLR mics for that? Okay, so this brings up a different thing. I think specifically if you are yes, I know, Bindi, you are one of those audio people, but that I needed to specify. Don't at me. If you're looking into getting multiple mics for different sounds, I think for the most part, if you are if you have a shotgun mic, you are in a more live action, getting a more live actiony sound out of that. Because if you're on set, on an on-camera set, if you're filming something like that, they are using a boom mic. They are using a 416 or like the MK 600 or something like that. They're using a boom mic, a shotgun mic. But if you're working on something like animation, I would argue that a condenser mic is going to sound probably better, because that's usually what everyone uses. People are using a lot of like 103s or a lot of some sort of Neumann or Gefels or something like that. So yeah, I think if you are looking into doing different things, there are different mics that are more suited for different things. Like I said, the SM7B, it's really good for podcast stuff, and it's also really good if you're a musician and you're singing or screaming into it. It's really good for that stuff, but it's not really great for VO stuff. As opposed to like the Neumann, it's really good for VO pretty much across the board, and it's also really good for music. But I wouldn't use a Neumann for podcast stuff. I feel like that's kind of overkill, Thoughts on RE20 at all for VAVO? Since we're talking about preamps, I'll add this. I got the Go XLR. Oh, the Go XLR. Yeah, this is good. So I can use multiple audio channels for routing, but it's also better than my Scarlett 2i2 without the Midas preamp. Specifically for my mic, so it's not having more to do. I have a Rode NT1, which I hardly use at the moment. Also have a cloud lifter to mitigate the buzz. Okay, I think you have a lot of numbers in this equation. I think what you can do is simplify. I think you can simplify things. I would say the RE20 is pretty much kind of similar to like the NT1. I think, as far as I remember, it's been a while since I worked with an RE20, but I think I like the NT1, and the NT1 sounds pretty good alongside, like other condensers that are, like the Neumann kind of stuff. It sounds pretty good for that kind of stuff. I don't really know a lot about using the Go XLR for like VO work. I think if you're using it for streaming, it's fantastic. I think if you're using a Scarlett with a Midas preamp, you're kind of limiting yourself because the Scarlett isn't really helping you. I would say you probably be better off looking into something like maybe like an Apollo Solo or something, or like a Audient ID 14 or something like that. That is like a preamp interface combo kind of situation. That way you don't have to separate it, because it's probably better unless you're looking for like actual like really high tier quality studio stuff. Probably better just to look into getting like a preamp interface combo. I wouldn't use the Cloud Lifter for anything VO related. Again, if you're using it for streaming, freaking perfect, fantastic. It sounds so good. But for VA work, engineers will hear it, and it's not super great. It's great for what it does, but it doesn't really fit into the VO lifestyle. Do I have any mic recommendations for lower female voices? Most of the comparisons are with higher range vocals. Lower female voices, actually, you'd probably sound really good on like a Blue, on like a Bluebird or a Baby Bottle or something like that. I think you'd probably sound good on the Rode NT1, or the NT1A. I would say you probably also would sound good on like a TLM 103. It kind of depends. We used to be in the before times, before the COVID times, we used to be able to go to places like Vintage King or Guitar Center and have what we would call a mic shootout. And it's where you just try out a bunch of different mics. And it really just kind of depends on like, what do you think sounds really good for your voice? I know someone who has a Copperhead Telefunken and sounds fantastic on that. So it just kind of depends on what fits the industry, but what also fits your voice. That is a good solid question. You kind of got to do the research. For the most part, it really depends. I can't be like, hey, get this mic, and if you get it and don't sound good on it, it's like I can't really help you on that. You got to do your research and stuff like that. You got to try out the mic. Mics are really kind of a try before you buy kind of situation. I usually ask people, hey, what studio, when you're going into the studio, what mic do you like the best when you're at this studio or that studio? And they'll be like, oh, I like this one. It's like, it's one of those things. What mouse or trackball do you use for editing? I use a Kensington Slim Blade. It is a trackball. I think trackballs are of the higher authority. If you are using a mouse, don't learn how to use a trackball. One, because the trackballs are just, they're actually just better. They're faster, they're more accurate. I don't care if you have a super high-tech gaming Razer mouse. The trackball is going to be better. It's much better for what we do as engineers, and it's more solid. Plus, it is what every studio has. Every studio. I know one engineer who uses like a Razer mouse, and he is a heathen, and he knows he's a heathen. So that's about it. Opinion on the 4K setting of the SSL2. I think it sounds really nice. I don't think it helps for VO necessarily. I think it does bring a certain color to it. I would err on the side of maybe keeping it off for VO work specifically.
Every engineer has told me to not have it on for VO work.
Yeah, Karina says every engineer has been like, turn it off for VO work. So I would argue to have it off for VO work. If you're doing anything not VO related, turn it on. It's really great. I love the color. Lunchbox gang. Yep, I have an ABI lunchbox. We are on that. Yes. Oh yes, drop the voice. Focus on the acting. Yes, go back. Gaffels are good. Yes, I do like the Gaffels. I don't sound great on a Gaffel, but I like the way everyone else sounds on it. If you liked the sound, the audio sound of stuff of like Naruto or Bleach or stuff like that, those shows were recorded almost entirely on Gaffels. Do I have any recommendations on interfaces, or guidance on determining what interface to get? If you are not doing a big studio thing. Get an interface preamp combo. I recommend the SSL2. It is a really good bang for buck. Not cheaper, but like lower tier preamp. And it sounds really good. If you're looking for something more high tier, I think the Apollo Twin or the Apollo Solo are kind of kings when it comes to like that combination preamp interface sound. Yeah, I think the Audient ID14 is also really good, a really good mid-tier preamp. I'm trying to think of other ones, but those are my usual go-tos when I talk about that stuff. As an audio engineer, thoughts on the ever so dreaded mouth clicks? Yeah, they suck. There is not much you can do about that, but drink water and have a healthy diet. That's really all it comes down to. If you had milk before a session or any dairy before a session, you're gonna have more mouth clicks. If you had spicy food before you get on mic, you're gonna have more mouth clicks. If you are not hydrating consistently, you're going to have more mouth clicks. Yeah, that's it. Well, one thing you could make every VA you work with do, what would it be? If there was one thing I could make every VA I work with do, learn their gain knob. I feel like I've probably said it a couple times, but understand your equipment. If you just buy things just because someone else told you to buy it and did not research it and learn how it works, kindly fuck off. Please learn your equipment. There's nothing worse than them being like, "Oh, what o'clock do you want me to put this at?" I don't know. It's your interface. It's your voice. Where is it supposed to sound good for you? Like, do the thing. Just learn your stuff. The more you know about your equipment, the better off it is, and the more that I can talk to you on a common ground. Because if you're just like, I don't know how to use this interface, and I'm like, well, it's your interface. Why would you buy something you don't know? You don't buy a car that you don't know how to drive, right?
Does that constantly.
Your dad flies planes.
Yeah, he can't drive cars.
Karina's like, my dad does that, and he can't drive. And I'm like, yeah, but your dad's a pilot.
Yeah.
If you're engineering a group record, is it more common for everyone to have the same mic, or some people in casts get their own mics? Some studios will send you kits. The big studios will, like, I think like Warner Brothers will like send you the actors setups. I think Disney will send you a setup. But for the most part, people have different setups. It kind of is what it is. People have different setups. We're kind of stuck on that. Every studio does it different, though. I would very much prefer that everyone has a similar setup or a similar mic, but I know that's never going to happen. Because every booth is going to sound different. Every space is going to sound different. We're kind of stuck there. There's nothing you can do about it. What do I have in my lunchbox? I just have the 512, which is just the gain, and then I have the EQ and I have the compressor. I don't even think I use the EQ, but I have the compressor on a light setting. But I am allowed because I am an engineer. But yeah. Thoughts on Audio Technica mics and Behringer interfaces? I'm not big on the Behringer interfaces unless they're like the higher tier ones. I think the low tier ones just aren't really great. The AT mics, I think they're good starter mics. But that's about it. When I have multiple VAs in a booth, how often do they get to crack a joke or have fun during a session? For example, Clone Wars cast was a big no-no unless you know who you're working with. It depends on who you're with. It really depends. When I'm trying to think of like a thing that I am actually allowed to talk about.
50th.
Yeah, there's also a big difference between, like, if this is your first time, shut up. If you've been working on this project consistently for like a year, yeah, you can crack Joe. It's fine, like, just don't piss them off and don't don't be wasting time the entire time. Every once in a while a joke is fine, but like don't go crazy. A lot of the stuff I do frequently is like I'm working with the same cast, and we've been doing the same projects for months. So we crack jokes, and but we keep it to a minimum, because it's like when it comes down to it, we got work to do. So it depends. It depends on what crew you're working with, and it depends on who the director is, whether or not they're about it. Um, it depends on who you're with. I would say err on the side of, if you've never worked with this person, shut up. Don't do the thing. What do you look for as far as noise floor? That's a good question. Noise floor is one of those things where it's like, if it is a lot, then it's a problem. Because if you cannot record at a healthy volume without your noise floor being noticeable off first glance, then that's a problem. Noise floor is one of those things. If I'm getting a healthy file that's somewhere around minus 10 dB ish, then I would expect your noise floor should probably be under minus 70. Sometimes that's not the case. Actually, most of the time that's not the case. That's just the point where I'm like, yes. I would say at a minus 70 average, as long as you are a healthy file, considering you're on conversational point on the gain and you're getting a healthy level, I would say a minus 70 is workable. Less than that is preferred. More than that, it kind of depends. There are quite a frequent amount of times where I get stuff like minus 40 or minus 50 when it comes to noise floor, and that's so much to take out. Because you can't, once you hit a compressor on that, it is so noticeable. Oh my god. The 512C Dual Master. C is in candy. What is my personal favorite microphone and why? My personal favorite is the SM7B. But that is specifically because it is good for my scream vocals when it comes to music. It is not good for VO work necessarily. Dumb question, but I want to get into more professional VO work. What would I recommend to upgrade from a Blue Yeti? An XLR mic. An XLR mic and an interface. Just a decent XLR mic and an interface. If you're spending less than $100 on something, it's probably not worth it. Yeah. Do audio engineers have apprenticeships? Yes and no. It's more, studios have more of like internships. But it kind of depends on the studio, really. I think that there are more internships than they are apprenticeships. I don't think it's pretty much the same thing, but I think we just call them internships. But most of the time, if you're interning at a studio, you're not doing a lot of specific, work. You're not doing a lot of specifically the hands-on work. You're kind of doing all of the other stuff in order to get the moment to watch over the people who are doing the work. But yeah. What's next after a U87 microphone? I don't know. Do you got 10 grand? Then look there. I don't think anyone needs anything past you. I think the U87 is already very expensive as it is. I don't think you need anything more expensive than a U87. I know plenty of people who have like $10,000 microphones, and I think they're overkill. I think it's just dick measuring at that point. I don't think they're necessary. I don't think it's necessary to have a mic that expensive. Because no studio, I don't know any studio who uses them frequently. So yeah, I don't know. But yes, Jordan, if you want to really pursue this like super professionally, then yeah, LA has got to be your end goal. Oh yeah, Kira brings up a good point. A $10,000 microphone won't fix a subpar recording space. So, if you got a really bunky, shitty space, it doesn't matter how expensive that microphone is. It will sound the same as a fucking Blue Yeti. So don't focus on getting a big badass mic. Focus on treating your space and getting a better booth setup. Yeah.
Yeah. It's vocal booth,
I know.
audio interface, and then
I
microphone.
know. So, well, Core is stopping. The most important thing is going to be your treatment. Your treatment is always your most important thing. So fuck off with your $10,000 mic. Your Neumann doesn't mean shit if you have a really bad setup. If you don't have a good treatment. Yeah, if you got the 10K, why the fuck are you looking into getting a microphone with the 10K? Get a booth. Get a build a booth. Get some treatment. It'll make your not so great equipment sound fucking fantastic. Get that studio bricks, baby. Get all up at that. Yeah, everyone always asks for the U87, and most of the time they're full of shit. I can't tell you how many times the studio has been like, "Do you have a U87?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." Sometimes I don't have the U87 available, and I just put it on something else. They don't know the difference. You know. See, Paradoxal, it's funny you say that, because I haven't heard that. But I have heard people who don't know how to turn down their gain in between, like, breaks. And sometimes you hear them going to the bathroom in the background. So, in between takes, if you're remote recording, if you're not in a booth, if you're not in, like, a closed-off booth, turn your gain down while you're going to the bathroom 2 feet away. We can hear that. Has becoming fine-tuned to noises in your engineer work made you pedantic about noises you hear that others can't? Yes! I hear so many things that other people can't because I'm trained in it, and I've done so much editorial in my life that I just hear it now. Even on games, AAA games, I will hear things and I'll be like, wow, they didn't fix that? All the freaking time. All the freaking time. Yeah, there are plenty of times where clients will be like, hey, can we use this thing? And I'll be like, sure. And then I'll use something else because they don't know what they're talking about. Free sound effects, yes. What is my favorite mute button hardware? There isn't one. I mean, hitting the mute button on if your interface has a mute button, cool. Just turn the gain knob down all the way. That's analog mute button. They're right there, baby. If you don't have a mute button, just turn your freaking gain down. If your gain is down all the way, they're not gonna hear it. Or just turn off your phantom power. Then you're not sending any signal. So that's better, if anything. Oh, speaking of phantom power, here's my side tangent of the night. There's a magical thing called hot plugging. And if you are doing it, you are breaking your equipment. Do not do this thing that I am about to tell you to do. You want to make sure your phantom power is off anytime you plug or unplug your microphone. If you unplug your microphone or plug it in while the phantom power is engaged, it can break your mic. It can send electrical freaking signals to your mic or your preamp, and it can destroy them. Please, for the love of God, do not hot plug your mic. I had one of my poor friends was like, hey, my really expensive mic sounds bad. Why is that? And I legit was listening to their files like, I don't know why it sounds bad. It sounds like you either dropped the microphone or you hot plugged it too many times. And they were like, I don't know what hot plugging is. And I'm like, it's when you don't turn off the phantom power when you unplug your mic. And they were like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And I was like, you dummy! Do not hot plug your mic. Please make sure your phantom power is off. Off. Before or anytime you plug or unplug, make sure your phantom power is off first. It can destroy your mic. It can destroy your preamp. And I know some, there's going to be one asshole out there who's going to be like, oh, well, a lot of the high-end gear has protections for that. Yes, they do, but they are not solid protections. And it does not mean that you can do the thing. I can't tell you how many people have destroyed equipment from that thing. And it's literally in the manual. If you got a manual on your preamp, it's going to be in there. Read your manuals. I cannot stress that enough. Please don't hot plug your mic. It's so bad. It will destroy your gear. Please, please. Any tips for people who want to build their own Whisper Room vocal boost? Do you think it's better to save up and buy one? It depends. Are you good at building stuff? And are you knowledgeable at how booths are, put together and how to minimize sound reflection and minimize, in any bleed? It depends on how comfortable you are and when it comes to building gear like that. If you are not, or if you are unsure, just save and buy one. Just save and buy one outright. Yeah, you see, even Kira didn't know about hot plugging until recently, and because I'm an engineer, it's like literally like the first thing in engineering school that you ever learn. So we're just like, oh yeah, that'll work. But yeah, please don't hot plug. But yeah, back to the booths. If you are comfortable, if you know what you're doing, and you know what you're doing, yes, build a booth. It is going to be much cheaper. If you don't know what you're doing, or if you are unsure of what to do, then just save up for a booth. It's not worth the stress, and it's not worth the time management. Building a booth takes a long freaking time. So yeah. Take that into consideration. You will be... I built my stepmother's booth, and it legit took me like 4 weeks. So take that into consideration. Which band member do you think you look the most like? Chris Cornell. Yeah, Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell is my music doppelganger. Oh yeah, I didn't think of that. The Go XLR doesn't have a phantom power. Well, it might. Does it have a symbol that says 48V? Because if that's the case, then that's a phantom power. Also, don't use phantom power with dynamic mics. Don't do it. It will destroy the mic. Certain mics need phantom power and certain mics don't. Do not use phantom power with dynamic mics. It will destroy the mic. Yeah, the cloud lifter. If you have a cloud lifter, yeah, you need it, but that's a different thing. How bad is it for the phantom power to always be on and the gear always to be set up? Okay, Bindi, look at it this way. If you leave your lights on and never turn them off, how much more quickly are they going to go out? Put it that way. As an engineer, I can tell you that every time I leave the studio or turn off my system, I turn everything off and I turn the phantom power off. Does screwing with phantom power super often, using it to mute, have similar effects to hot plugging? No, because you're not plugging anything in. If you're unplugging your mic, then yeah, don't do that. But yeah, you can turn off your phantom power. Like, I literally go into the studio, I turn on the phantom power, and at the end of the day, I turn it off. The phantom power does not need to be on all the time. But yeah. Any preference for studio monitors when editing audio? Speakers, not headphones. So I use the Genelec. Hold on. I think the 1810. Oh no, hold on. Genelec. Let me just. I don't remember. I really don't remember. I'm sorry. I will tell you though. They are the very specific ones. I am using I don't remember. I want to say I am using like the 8010s or something along those lines. But I'm using specific specific ones. Genelec is just a good brand in general. Like any of their like active monitors are really good. I also really like the shoot, I don't remember the name. The Atom A7Xs are really, really good as well. I really like those. Those are very flat sounding speakers. They don't add anything. They are kind of they are my wish list. They are my wish list speakers. Has any actor ever tried to touch the mic after you adjusted it? Yes, and I don't necessarily yell at people often. But if you ever touch the mic without my permission, I will bitch you the fuck out. Please don't touch the mic. It is not your job. It is your job to sit there and be pretty. If it is your mic, yeah, have fun. If it is my mic, don't touch it. I have watched people get completely kicked off of projects for that shit. Don't do it under any circumstances. Hey, I've heard that standard dimensions for PVC booths should be at least 4x4. Can you get into why that's the case? I don't think that is correct, actually. I think that may be standard. I don't think that is appropriate, though. So I think the better standard is to have a uneven booth. So you don't want something that is a perfect square. Because it sounds more, it does I can't like get into it like without sounding like one of those assholes, but it does a lot of stuff with the sound reflections that just aren't great for a square. So if you, instead of getting a 4x4, get a 4x5, get something that's more of a rectangle or something that is just less of a square. If you look at most like big studio booths, most of them are either giant rooms or they're just weird shapes. Because weird shapes are just better. So I would argue don't use 4x4, get 4x5, or get a 5x6, or get a 6x7. You know what I mean? Something that's more of a rectangle and less of a square. Good pair of headphones for actors to use for editing auditions and stuff. This is a great one. My favorite go-to headphones are the Sony MDR 7500s. They are around $100-ish, and they are the best bang for buck headphones that you will ever have in your life. I am still using the same pair of my MDRs that I have been using for 10 years, and they still sound good, and they're not torn up. They are fantastic. They're great flat sounding. Use those, please. For the love of God, use those. Also, on that same note, get actual studio headphones. Please don't get Beats. Please don't get something that has a Bluetooth enabled anything. Just get specific just headphones. Not the one with the microphone attached to it. You can't use your phone, your phone things or anything like that. Get actual headphones. Get actual monitor headphones. They are much better. Plus, if you are doing any sort of remote record session, if you are using something like Beats that come with like a microphone, like a cord, like your phone headsets that have the little microphone or something like that, don't use those. They cause so many problems across the board. The Sony MDR 75 somethings, yes. Yeah, Dracomies has got it. Yes, wireless, anything wireless, we're going to want to stab you. Please don't do that. Get actual studio headphones. The MDRs are like $100. They are the best $100 headphones you will ever have in your life. If you want something better, you can get like the Bear Dynamics, the DN 75 somethings or something like that. I don't remember. Kira, the ones they use at like Bang Zoom and stuff like that. There are other ones that are like better, higher tier. But if you're looking for the easy good ones, those MDR Sonys are fantastic. They are so good, and you will use them they will last forever as long as you take care of them. But yeah, there is a bird behind me. Ha 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 ha. Yes, they're great for monitoring, and they don't add the DT770s. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Those are like if you're willing to spend that's like if you're willing to spend a couple $100 for some monitors. Usually studios have stuff like that, but I think if you just need a good pair of headphones, the Sonys are fantastic, and they're really well priced. It's it's $100 set of headphones that easily sound like they're 3 times as much. Do I prefer raw audio? Yes. Yes. If you give me anything that is not raw when it's a remote record project, we will possibly eject you from the project. Please give us raw audio if we were doing a remote record session, or unless they specify otherwise. While we're on the subject, ATM40Xs. I don't remember. Those are the Audio Technica headphones. Is that right? They are. Oh, hold on. I'm looking this up real quick. They're all right. I don't have any problems with them. I know a lot of people use these. I think they're kind of on the same level as the MDRs. I think the MDRs are better. But I think those are fine. But yeah. Was there anything I missed? Do you guys have anything else before we close this feature down? Feel like I missed probably a couple things, but yeah. Yes, you guys are very much welcome. Thank you for listening to me just scream into the microphoning for a moment. Yes, I hope that my information was helpful. Actually, Kira, if I can find it, or maybe if you know where it is, I will put that little seminar into the thing. Let me see if I can find it. It is a specific Zoom. I believe this is it. Give me a second to make sure. Copy link. Okay, so I will put this in the chat. This is like a kind of a breakdown for like if you don't know how to do the engineering thing. Check that out. I know it's in one of the other VAC chat things, but yeah. Yeah, go check that out. It's a lot of stuff. There is a whole seminar. There is actually 2 seminars. You don't need to watch both of them. They are the exact same seminar, but it is me and a couple other audio people who went together and put up a bunch of stuff. It gives you a lot of like examples. It gives you a lot of like example microphones and preamps and setups and stuff like that. Go check it out. It's a bunch, just a bunch of information. It's all free. And then we have 2 seminars that we do going through all the rest of it. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it is at @THE_LILZ. Hold on, let me just. I'll just that. Oh nope, I can't do it. Oh, I'm in slow. I got slow moded. How dare you slow mode me? That is my Twitch, or not my Twitch, my Twitter. You can follow me there. Although Cora and I are Twitch streaming in a bit, so if you guys want to watch me, scream like a girl, to Resident Evil Village, you know, if you want to watch me scream, to Resident Evil Village and get scared and stuff, come watch. It is at Karina Betger on Twitch, right? Yeah. Twitch.tv/Karina Betger. They also stream a lot of Genshin and stuff like that, but you know, slow mode takes another victim. You can DM me. I don't think I will. I rarely check my DMs. And I definitely don't accept friend requests unless I know you in real life. Sorry. That's kind of stop. But yeah, I know I got I got killed by slow mode because there's still. Thank you, Duel Master. That's where I'll be in a little bit. Yeah.
He does answer a lot of questions.
Yeah.
In the class.
Yeah, during Karina's classes, I tend to pop in and be like, "Hey, here's I'm gonna have my dick engineer point of view, to spam for a second." So if you guys ever take Karina's classes, you'll see me or hear me being a dick in the background and being like, "Yeah, don't do that," kind of stuff. Yeah, check it out. If you wanna come hang out on Twitch in a bit, we'll probably be on in like a half an hour ish. Probably like half an hour ish. Come watch me play Resident Evil and Scream. It'll be fun. Yeah, there's my Twitter. Thank you, Kira. Follow me. Come chat. Yeah. I will see you guys when I see you guys, I guess. You guys are welcome. See you soon.